Today we head to Louisiana and Argentina to investigate some paranormal shenanigans within Bloodrayne. But before we start, I want to give a big shout out to Katophoenix for yet another great piece. Now let's dive in and fuck the Nazis world, shall we? Developed by Terminal Reality and released in 2002, Bloodrayne takes heavy inspiration from Terminal Reality's earlier title, Nocturne, which was a third-person survival horror game. Bloodrayne is a third-person hack-and-slash vampire adventure game with very adult themes, including innuendos aplenty, scantily clad women, and rain sucking the life out of her foes. You play as the titular Rain, a dampire, a half-human, half-vampire killing machine. On your first mission for the Brimstone Society, you're sent into Louisiana to investigate a mysterious illness in the swamps that appears to be of a supernatural persuasion. While there, you discover not only the source of the illness, but an evil plague of demonic spider creatures, and you learn the plot is bigger than initially hinted at. Overall, the story is pretty good, I like how it's told, and the presentation is fun. The gameplay is hectic and fun, hacking and slashing and blasting your way through monsters, infected Bayou Hicks, Nazis, and demonic fiends ensures there's plenty of variety to kill. As you play further into the game, you unlock more vampire and combat abilities, such as the slowdown effect to dodge gunfire, an aura sense to see enemies and objectives through the environment, and more. The big thing in the game is your vampire blood rage. Using this, you can rip swarms of minor enemies to shreds and tear huge chunks out of larger enemies. And due to the slowdown effect, you can run literal circles around the enemies while slicing them up at the same time. You're also a very acrobatic character. You can flip and fly around the battlefield with ease, leaving you with a versatile control of said battlefield. There is like 6 control schemes if you're counting the left-handed variants, so there's a decent amount of control flexibility as well. They can feel a bit stiff and take some time to get used to, but a lot of older PS2 games had this issue as well, so it's more of a thing you grow used to. Once you're acclimated to it, you'll be slicing and dicing things to pieces with ease. There's certainly no shortage to enemies in this game, from poor infected Bayou Hicks mutating into various stages of monsters, to demonic spiders, and the Third fucking Reich's paranormal division and their entire extended armory, demonic parasites, crazy priest, and ancient feral vampires. There is plenty of variety. Though some of the enemies feel very unbalanced, such as the Daymite Guardians, they take very little damage to guns. If you try to get within melee range without blood rage, they tend to snatch you up and stun lock you for a large amount of damage, which feels like bullshit, you know? It's not so bad when there's 1 or 2 of them, but there's a point in the game where it throws 3 of them and there's no cannon fodder to charge your blood rage back up on. So they just are fucking annoying. The atmosphere is excellent, with a dark, foreboding, and at times blood-pumping soundtrack. This game is dark, with plenty of ambience such as Nazis fighting demons who are trying to infest their bodies. The overall mood is also dark, but has plenty of morbid humor and innuendos to help break up the tension and keep the action flowing.
Quiet, baby. What will the neighbors think? I love what you've done with yourself. You look fabulous. I guess I didn't kill you enough the first time. I won't make that mistake again.
Where'd you like me?
Cute. That's the first thing you've ever said to me, Commando, and I've heard it all before. We need a better come on.
So overall, I enjoy the atmosphere. It's a lot of fun, especially hearing those Nazis scream for their life as a demon tries to violently invade their face. The music I find to be dark, atmospheric, moody, and at times action-packed. It's fun to listen to throughout the game. The voice acting and sound effects are a lot of fun too. When Rain gets into something, she really gets into something. Especially when it comes to draining fools of their sweet, sweet blood. And the Nazis scream and fucking beg for their lives, all while you make it rain with their limbs and blood flying. My personal favorite quote was from a possessed officer, stating he'd wear my skin like lederhosen. The graphics certainly aren't the best. There's a lot of visual issues, such as in the Louisiana section, flickering muddy water, but there isn't any real performance issues. The game doesn't really slow down outside of blood rage, or the intentional slowdown effect used for dodging bullets. The monsters and environments do look pretty cool when they aren't spazzing the fuck out. The blood and gore is certainly nice. It's a take it or leave it category for me. It has good and bad elements, but it's also an early PS2 game, so I could give it a little bit of slack, especially as developers were just trying to get used to the hardware at that point. The visual issues are certainly annoying as hell at times, and some of the enemies just feel artificially difficult and cheap, forcing you to use the blood rage. But this doesn't work when there's a bunch of them and you can't kill one in a single round, let alone all three. And there's no enemies nearby to grind on, so you're stuck just trying to poke and prod where you can build your blood rage back up and hit them with it, without being stun locked to death. I don't consider this next thing too much of a downside, but some people might not be okay with the sexual innuendos and scantily clad characters. If that's not your cup of tea, you probably shouldn't play this game. Otherwise, let's jump into the final section, shall we? So how do I feel about this game overall? Well, I had a lot of fun with the game. With the amount of blood, limbs, and bodies raining all over the battlefield, it's hard to not like it. This game really exemplifies what I loved about the PS2 era greatly. It was before games grew so huge that experimentation was highly discouraged over profit. You know, when the AA market was still alive, before it morphed into the AAA and indie-only scene it is nowadays. It's not a perfect game, but it doesn't pretend to be. It's fun and enjoyable, with a creative premise and an interesting story that keeps your interest, along with a dark and morbid sense of humor and atmosphere. So overall, yeah, I'd say give it a shot. I picked up a copy for about $10 at a local game store, and it sells for pretty cheap still. Now, I'd like to give one last shout out to Katophoenix for another great piece, and I'd also like to say check out all of our social media and links down below. This has been Cor, and I'm signing off.